Our journey begins on a quiet evening in Berlin, 1852. Adolf Anderssen sits across from Jean Dufresne, and what follows is one of the most beautiful games ever played, a game they would call the Evergreen. Move 1. White plays pawn to e4. Black plays pawn to e5. Move 2. White plays knight to f3. Black plays knight to c6. Move 3. White plays bishop to c4. Black plays bishop to c5. Move 4. White plays pawn to b4. Black takes the pawn on b4 with the bishop. Move 5. White plays pawn to c3. Black plays bishop to a5. Move 6. White plays pawn to d4. Black captures the pawn on d4 with the pawn. Move 7. White castles kingside. The king tucks away to safety. Black plays pawn to d3. Move 8. White plays queen to b3. Black plays queen to f6. Move 9. White plays pawn to e5. Black plays queen to g6. Move 10. White plays rook to e1. Black plays knight to e7. Move 11. White plays bishop to a3. Black plays pawn to b5. Move 12. White takes the pawn on b5 with the queen. Black plays rook to b8. Move 13. White plays queen to a4. Black plays bishop to b6. Move 14. White plays knight to d2. Black plays bishop to b7. Move 15. White plays knight to e4. Black plays queen to f5. Move 16. White takes the pawn on d3 with the bishop. Black plays queen to h5. Move 17. White plays knight to f6. Check. Black captures the knight on f6 with the pawn. Move 18. White captures the pawn on f6 with the pawn. Black plays rook to g8. Move 19. White plays rook to d1. Black takes the knight on f3 with the queen. Move 20. White takes the knight on e7 with the rook. Check. Black takes the rook on e7 with the knight. Move 21. White takes the pawn on d7 with the queen. Check. Black takes the queen on d7 with the king. Move 22. White plays bishop to f5. Check. Black plays king to e8. Move 23. White plays bishop to d7. Check. Black plays king to f8. Move 24. White takes the knight on e7 with the bishop. Check. And that is checkmate. A breathtaking finish. The Evergreen game. As beautiful today as it was over a century and a half ago. Now, we travel to New York, 1956. A 13-year-old boy named Bobby Fischer sits down against Donald Byrne, one of the strongest players in America. What unfolds is the game of the century. Move 1. White plays knight to f3. Black plays knight to f6. Move 2. White plays pawn to c4. Black plays pawn to g6. Move 3. White plays knight to c3. Black plays bishop to g7. Move 4. White plays pawn to d4. Black castles kingside. The king tucks away to safety. Move 5. White plays bishop to f4. Black plays pawn to d5. Move 6. White plays queen to b3. Black captures the pawn on c4 with the pawn. Move 7. White takes the pawn on c4 with the queen. Black plays pawn to c6. Move 8. White plays pawn to e4. Black plays knight to d7. Move 9. White plays rook to d1. Black plays knight to b6. Move 10. White plays queen to c5. Black plays bishop to g4. Move 11. White plays bishop to g5. Black plays knight to a4. Move 12. White plays queen to a3. Black takes the knight on c3 with the knight. Move 13. White captures the knight on c3 with the pawn. Black takes the pawn on e4 with the knight. Move 14. White takes the pawn on e7 with the bishop. Black plays queen to b6. Move 15. White plays bishop to c4. Black takes the pawn on c3 with the knight. Move 16. White plays bishop to c5. Black plays rook to e8. Check. Move 17. White plays king to f1. Black plays bishop to e6. Move 18. White takes the queen on b6 with the bishop. Black takes the bishop on c4 with the bishop. Check. Move 19. White plays king to g1. Black plays knight to e2. Check. Move 20. White plays king to f1. Black takes the pawn on d4 with the knight. Check. Move 21. White plays king to g1. Black plays knight to e2. Check. Move 22. White plays king to f1. Black plays knight to c3. Check. Move 23. White plays king to g1. Black captures the bishop on b6 with the pawn. Move 24. White plays queen to b4. Black plays rook to a4. Move 25. White takes the pawn on b6 with the queen. Black takes the rook on d1 with the knight. Move 26. White plays pawn to h3. Black takes the pawn on a2 with the rook. Move 27. White plays king to h2. Black takes the pawn on f2 with the knight. Move 28. White plays rook to e1. Black takes the rook on e1 with the rook. Move 29. White plays queen to d8. Check. Black plays bishop to f8. Move 30. White takes the rook on e1 with the knight. Black plays bishop to d5. Move 31. White plays knight to f3. Black plays knight to e4. Move 32. White plays queen to b8. Black plays pawn to b5. Move 33. White plays pawn to h4. Black plays pawn to h5. Move 34. White plays knight to e5. Black plays king to g7. Move 35. White plays king to g1. Black plays bishop to c5. Check. Move 36. White plays king to f1. Black plays knight to g3. Check. Move 37. White plays king to e1. Black plays bishop to b4. Check. Move 38. White plays king to d1. Black plays bishop to b3. Check. Move 39. White plays king to c1. Black plays knight to e2. Check. Move 40. White plays king to b1. Black plays knight to c3. Check. Move 41. White plays king to c1. Black plays rook to c2. Check. And that is checkmate. A 13-year-old boy, and a game that would echo through the ages. The game of the century. Our final game tonight takes us to the seaside town of Hastings, England, in 1895. Wilhelm Steinitz, the first official world champion, faces Kurt von Bardeleben in what would become known as the Hastings Immortal. Move 1. White plays pawn to e4. Black plays pawn to e5. Move 2. White plays knight to f3. Black plays knight to c6. Move 3. White plays bishop to c4. Black plays bishop to c5. Move 4. White plays pawn to c3. Black plays knight to f6. Move 5. White plays pawn to d4. Black captures the pawn on d4 with the pawn. Move 6. White captures the pawn on d4 with the pawn. Black plays bishop to b4. Check. Move 7. White plays knight to c3. Black plays pawn to d5. Move 8. White captures the pawn on d5 with the pawn. Black takes the pawn on d5 with the knight. Move 9. White castles kingside. The king tucks away to safety. Black plays bishop to e6. Move 10. White plays bishop to g5. Black plays bishop to e7. Move 11. White takes the knight on d5 with the bishop. Black takes the bishop on d5 with the bishop. Move 12. White takes the bishop on d5 with the knight. Black takes the knight on d5 with the queen. Move 13. White takes the bishop on e7 with the bishop. Black takes the bishop on e7 with the knight. Move 14. White plays rook to e1. Black plays pawn to f6. Move 15. White plays queen to e2. Black plays queen to d7. Move 16. White plays rook to c1. Black plays pawn to c6. Move 17. White plays pawn to d5. Black captures the pawn on d5 with the pawn. Move 18. White plays knight to d4. Black plays king to f7. Move 19. White plays knight to e6. Black plays rook to c8. Move 20. White plays queen to g4. Black plays pawn to g6. Move 21. White plays knight to g5. Check. Black plays king to e8. Move 22. White takes the knight on e7 with the rook. Check. Black plays king to f8. Move 23. White plays rook to f7. Check. Black plays king to g8. Move 24. White plays rook to g7. Check. Black plays king to h8. Von Bardeleben simply stood up and left the board, unable to face the inevitable. And with that, we rest. Good night.